the only major river on Earth that defies logic, flowing backward from the heat of the south to the cool of the north. Without this single anomaly of nature, human history as we know it would simply vanish. Imagine standing at the edge of the world. Behind you lies the Sahara, a vast, unforgiving ocean of sand where silence reigns and nothing grows. But take just one step forward, and the world transforms. Suddenly, you hear the rustle of tall papyrus reeds swaying in the breeze. You smell the distinct, earthy scent of wet soil and blooming lotus. You hear the rhythmic sound of water lapping against the hull of a wooden boat. You are standing on the banks of the Nile. For thousands of years, this river has been more than just a body of water. It is a timeline, a deity, and a lifeline all at once. To the ancient Egyptians, the western bank represented death, the setting sun, the tombs, the journey into the afterlife. The eastern bank was life, the rising sun, the temples, the bustling cities, and flowing between them was this eternal current, a force so powerful it turned a desert into a garden. It is a place where time seems to fold in on itself. Watch the water closely, and you might see a modern cruise ship passing a small, weathered fishing boat that looks identical to the ones carved into the walls of temples 5,000 years ago. The Nile does not just flow through the geography of Egypt, it flows through the very soul of its people. Today, we are not just looking at a map. We are drifting down the artery of a civilization, listening to the stories whispered by the water. Welcome to Culture Journey. Today, we are embarking on an expedition to the heart of North Africa to understand the rhythm of life along the Nile River, the Iteru, as the ancients called it, simply meaning the river. When the Greek historian Herodotus visited Egypt centuries ago, he famously declared that Egypt is the gift of the Nile. It is a phrase often repeated, but its truth is profound. Without this river, Egypt would be entirely desert. Yet because of it, a narrow strip of fertile land, sometimes only a few miles wide, became the cradle of mathematics, architecture, and spirituality. But this isn't just a history lesson about pharaohs and stone monuments. We want to understand the living river. We want to explore how the Nile shapes the morning routine of a farmer in Luxor, how it influences the spiritual beliefs of the Nubian fishermen, and how it continues to be the gathering place for families in the bustling metropolis of Cairo. From the source in the deep south to the delta in the north, the river connects everyone. It is the silent witness to weddings, funerals, festivals, and the quiet moments of contemplation. So, find a comfortable spot, perhaps with a cup of tea in hand, and let us drift downstream together to discover the soul of Egypt. To understand life here, we must first understand the mud. It sounds simple, but the black silt of the Nile is the most precious substance in the region. The ancients called their country Kemet, which translates to the black land, referring to the dark, fertile soil deposited by the river. They contrasted this with Deshret, the red land, the sterile desert that surrounded them. For millennia, the rhythm of life was dictated entirely by the river's pulse. Before modern dams controlled the flow, the Nile would flood every year. This season was known as Akhet, the inundation. It wasn't viewed as a disaster, but as a miraculous arrival. When the star Sirius rose in the sky, the waters would swell, bringing rich minerals from the Ethiopian highlands and depositing them onto the Egyptian banks. Imagine the anxiety and hope of an ancient farmer. If the waters rose too high, villages would be swept away. If they rose too low, there would be famine. It was a delicate balance, one that gave birth to gods. The deity Hapi was the personification of this flood, depicted as a figure of abundance, bringing water to the parched throat of the desert. If you were living in that time, waiting for the waters to rise, how would you feel watching the river swell? Would you feel fear of the flood, or gratitude for the coming harvest? A reminder of how deeply connected our ancestors were to the forces of nature, forces we often try to control today. Even now, though the flood is controlled by the Aswan High Dam, the reverence remains. Farmers still look to the water with a knowing eye. In the rural villages, you can still see the shaduf being used, a simple, hand-operated lever to lift water from the river into the irrigation canals. It is a piece of technology that has remained virtually unchanged for thousands of years, a testament to the enduring simplicity of life on the banks. The Nile is not just a source of food, it is a highway. Before roads and railways, the river was the only way to connect the fractured villages of the valley. It was the Nile that allowed the massive stones of the pyramids to be transported from quarries hundreds of miles away. While the stone monuments speak of eternity and stillness, the river itself speaks of movement. To hear its true voice, we must step away from the pyramids and aboard the Felucca. These traditional wooden sailboats, with their distinctive lateen sails, are the butterflies of the river. They do not use motors. They rely entirely on the wind and the current. Sailing on a felucca is a sensory experience unlike any other. The silence is profound. Without the roar of an engine, all you hear is the wind snapping the canvas and the water parting beneath the wood. The captains of these boats are masters of the elements, reading the ripples on the water to find the wind, tacking back and forth in a dance that has been choreographed over centuries. Have you ever been on a boat that moves only by the power of the wind? There is a surrender involved. You cannot force the journey. You must move at nature's pace. In our fast-paced world, do you think we have lost the art of waiting for the wind? There is a beautiful legend that the Nile on Earth is a mirror of the Milky Way in the sky. The ancients believed the river was a passage not just between cities, but between worlds. When a pharaoh died, their soul would travel on a solar bark across the sky, just as their body traveled down the river to the tomb. The water was seen as the boundary between the known and the unknown. Even today, watching the sunset from the west bank of Luxor, seeing the sky turn violet and the river turn to indigo, you can feel that spiritual weight. It is a place where the veil between the present and the eternity feels incredibly thin. While the ancient history is heavy, modern life along the Nile is vibrant, loud, and incredibly social. In the evenings, as the heat of the day dissipates, the riverbanks come alive. This is the time of the Corniche. In cities like Cairo, Aswan, and Luxor, the waterfront promenade is the city's living room. Young couples walk hand in hand, eating roasted corn or sweet potatoes sold from steaming carts. Families spread out picnics on the grass. The sound of Arabic pop music drifts from passing party boats, mixing with the call to prayer echoing from the minarets. And then there is the tea. Ah, Egyptian tea. Shai. You cannot separate the river from the tea culture. Small cafes line the water's edge, often just simple plastic chairs set up in the sand. Here, people sit for hours, sipping strong, sugary black tea with fresh mint, watching the water flow. It is a ritual of slowing down. The river flows endlessly, and so the people learn patience. There is a saying here, he who drinks from the Nile is destined to return. Perhaps it is because once you have sat by this water, experienced this specific brand of peace, your soul leaves a piece of itself behind. In these rural communities, hospitality is not just a custom, it is a sacred duty. Don't be surprised if a walk along the banks leads to an invitation into a stranger's home. The question is, would you accept a cup of tea from someone you just met? It is often in these unplanned moments that the true magic of travel reveals itself. As we travel further south towards Aswan, the landscape changes. The limestone cliffs turn to granite, and the river is broken by massive black boulders. This is the land of Nubia. The Nubian people have lived along the Nile for thousands of years, and their culture is vibrant, colorful, and distinct. Their houses are painted in brilliant blues, yellows, and oranges, standing out starkly against the desert backdrop. For the Nubians, the Nile is not just a resource, it is a family member. Many Nubian songs and poems are dedicated to the river, speaking to it as a lover or a mother. When the Aswan High Dam was built in the 1960s, creating Lake Nasser, many Nubian villages were submerged, and the people were moved. Yet, their connection to the water remains unbreakable. They still fish the river, they still tell the stories of the water spirits. And we must mention the river's most fearsome resident, the crocodile. In ancient times, the crocodile god Sobek was worshipped as a symbol of power and fertility. Temples were built in his honor, like the one at Kom, which stands right on the river bend. While the large crocodiles are mostly behind the dam in Lake Nasser today, the symbol remains potent. It represents the raw, untamable power of nature that the river embodies. It is a reminder that while the Nile gives life, it also commands respect. This brings up a fascinating thought. Humanity has always tried to tame nature. We built the dam to control the floods and generate electricity, which modernized Egypt. But in doing so, the nutrient-rich silt stopped flowing, and the natural rhythm was interrupted. It is the eternal trade-off of progress. What do you think? Is it better to harness nature for safety and power, or to live at the mercy of its natural cycles? Today, the Nile faces new challenges. Population growth, pollution, and climate change are threatening this ancient lifeline. The soul of Egypt is under pressure. But just as the river has survived droughts and dynastic falls over 5,000 years, the people are adapting. There is a growing movement of young Egyptians working to clean the river, to protect the banks, and to revive ancient sustainable farming practices. They understand that the Nile is not a limitless resource, but a fragile treasure that must be protected for the future. Despite the smog of Cairo or the noise of the traffic, if you go down to the water's edge at twilight, the magic is still there. The water turns a deep, bruised purple. The silhouettes of palm trees cut against the orange sky. The white egret birds fly low over the surface, returning to their nests. In that moment, the thousands of years of history vanish, and it is just you and the river. The Nile teaches us that everything passes. Kings rise and fall. Temples crumble into sand. Languages change, but the water keeps flowing. It is the only constant in a land of changing sands. Our journey along the Nile is drawing to a close, but the river flows on. We have seen how it turned death into life, how it carried the stones of history, and how it continues to brew the tea of modern friendship. To visit Egypt and only see the stone monuments is to miss the heartbeat of the country. The true monument of Egypt is not the Great Pyramid, but the river itself. It is the liquid history that binds the past to the present, the south to the north, and the human spirit to the earth. When you look at the Nile, you are looking at the same water that Moses floated upon, that Cleopatra sailed, and that countless generations have used to wash, drink, and pray. It is a humbling reminder of our place in the long story of humanity. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson the Nile offers us: resilience. No matter the obstacles, no matter the heat of the desert or the shifting of the winds, the river always finds a way to the sea. It moves forward, always giving, always enduring. The river reflects the human soul, and the journey to understand it may never truly end. But here, by the banks of the Nile, that journey feels a little more peaceful, a little more eternal. Thank you for drifting down this ancient river with us today. We hope this journey brought a sense of wonder and perhaps a moment of calm to your day. If you enjoyed this exploration, we would love to hear from you. Have you ever visited a river that felt like it had a soul of its own? Or, if you could travel to the Nile tomorrow, would you choose to explore the ancient temples first, or simply sail on a quiet felucca at sunset? Please share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Reading your perspectives is the best part of our journey. And if you wish to continue exploring the beautiful, hidden cultural corners of our world, consider subscribing to Culture Journey. There are many more paths to walk and waters to sail, together. Until next time, travel well.